see dead people.
Welcome to Blondes and Booze. You are about to embark on a journey, one that often leads to more questions than answers. But fear not, your host, Krista, Aaron, and Brandy have the experience, the perseverance, and yes, even the gifts to pull back the veil and allow us to glimpse the other side. They will share not only their experiences, but will introduce you to world-renowned researchers and experiencers to help you find answers in the murky waters of what we call the paranormal. Their bonds with each other reach far beyond friendship, resulting in a pull no punches approach to the many subjects they explore. Their goal? To open eyes, hearts, and even minds to what lies on the other side, and the answers residing there.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
How are you, Brandy?
Just tired in this terrible weather. It's been ice and snow all week. I'm tired. It's taking me an extra hour to get to work, extra hour to get home.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and then today it started to thaw out, so there's a muddy mess and water everywhere. And I'm like, we're going to get an Arctic blast again tonight. I'm like, this stuff's going to freeze all up again. So no luck again tomorrow, I guess. But that's all right.
It's supposed to be warmer here over the weekend. So back up in the 50s and 60s by Monday and Tuesday. So
gosh, and that's so weird for you being, in the northern part of the state. I'm in the southern part of the state, and I'm getting all this terrible weather.
You keep it.
I'm trying to get rid of it.
You keep it.
I'm going to pass that on to Tennessee, I think. Sorry, everybody lives in Tennessee, but I'm trying to pass it over there.
Now, I'm pretty excited about tonight's show. I'm a big fan, and I think we all are of his shows. So anyway, let's not waste any time. Let's get our intro done, and let's move forward.
Right.
We just want to remind everybody on Monday night.
Oh, okay. I could do that. You
want to do that? You can do that.
You can do that. You can watch me and Tex on Texas Front Porch on Mondays at 6:30 p.m. That is Central Time. On Tuesday, we have Van Buren Variety. That is at 7 p.m. East or Central. I keep talking about BMR. He's always doing everything in Eastern. Beyond BMR is after that at 8 p.m. Central. On Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central, we have Jason McLean Questions Everything. On Thursday, that's at 12 noon Central, we have Bigfoot Michigan Rob. That's Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob at 12 noon Central. And at 8 o'clock p.m. Central, you have us, Blondes and Booze. On Friday, if you just can't get enough of us, we're on again at 8 p.m. with Blondes, Booze, and the Woo.
Woohoo!
So there you are. The woo.
Woohoo! And then tonight, we have a really cool guest, and I'm pretty excited. We have Aleksander Petakov from Small Town Monsters. And then we have a co-host, too, that most of you guys know who she is already. She's always in chat. She's a good friend of ours. I'm going to bring her up.
Hey, everybody.
Miss Letitia.
Hi, Letitia.
Hi, everybody.
She's going to start helping us out a little bit every now and then when she can, and so we appreciate it, especially a lot on the nights that we talk any of the inhumanoid type creatures. So anyway, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's bring up Alex, and let's get this rolling. Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on. How are you guys?
We appreciate having you on, that you agreed to do this, because I have to tell you, I watch a lot of documentaries and your show, Small Town Monsters, and Hellbent Holler, and this is the honest to God's truth, are the only two that hold my attention. Like I look forward for when you guys all put something else out. And I don't mean that bad to anybody else that's out there. It's just it takes a lot to keep my interest, and you guys do. So
Yeah, she constantly sends me these links. Hey, you need to watch this. And she just sends me the links. I end up watching all these documentaries with her, you know. It's like,
that's great.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
I appreciate that. It's good company to keep with the Hellbent Holler folks for sure.
Yeah, they're great too. Joe and Jesse are wonderful. We actually had them on not that long ago. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome people too.
And they usually pop in and pop out sometimes.
Yeah, in chat they do. So
we might see them a little bit.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'll tell you, there's not a lot of people that really get out in the field as hardcore, I think, as they do, and certainly we do some of that too. Yeah. So I've talked to Joe a lot and Jesse about we swap gear and that sort of stuff sometimes, and kind of trade stories about, oh, this works in the field, this thing doesn't work so well. Yeah. So it's cool when somebody kind of has similar sort of they have similar way of getting out in the field and really trying out gear. They're not just going to the campground and messing around, you know.
Right. Exactly. And there's a lot to it, you know, like Brandy and I, our first time actually going out into the field was just 2 weeks ago at the LBL. And we went with Letitia and her husband Barton and Daryl. There was a few others that went. And, you know, it was a whole new ball game to us. And I definitely appreciate what the people who do the boots on the ground, what they go through and what they do. Cause it was cold and, you know,
oh my gosh, it was freezing. Of course,
miserable conditions. That's the way to it's, you know, it's in the moment, it's not fun, but you look back on it and it's, oh wow, that was an experience. You know, I look back on some of these times where cursing it in the moment, but you look back at it and you kind of forget the negative and you remember sort of the positive about it. At least that's the way I've seen it. So plenty of those kinds of times out in the woods, but I think they're character building. That's what they're good for.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to start off in the beginning. How did you get started in all this weirdness?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in mysteries and strange creatures and that sort of thing. I was really into dinosaurs as a kid. In the 90s, you know, Jurassic Park, that was a big deal. So I was just always kind of interested in that. And my dad actually told me the story of the Yeti. And that really sparked my attention probably more than anything. I was on a skiing trip in the mountains, and it kind of set the scene. And I get this Yeti action figure, and there's something about it that made me think these things, looking out in the hills, just saying something like this is probably out there. Yeah. And so I started watching documentaries on it and reading books on it as a kid. And as I got older, you know, interest faded a little bit, but it would always kind of come back. You know, there was the 2008 Georgia Bigfoot hoax. I remember that was broke international news, right? They did a news conference. It was a whole silly affair, but at the time it kind of recaptured my audience and then, or recaptured my attention, I should say. And then when Finding Bigfoot came back on, as kind of like a show covering that topic, I regained an interest, and I was reading all the blogs at the time. That was really kind of before social media. And then I started just doing films on my own, just kind of saying, well, you know, I like these cryptid topics. I might as well do some stuff. And I had a chance to go to Loch Ness actually. And I did a short, like 12-minute video on it. And I don't recommend anyone watch that. It's from like 2014, 2015. Yeah. Spare yourself.
Right.
But, you know, I just started doing, I actually wanted to do kind of, I wasn't even into Bigfoot as much. I mean, I really liked the Bigfoot topic, but I didn't really see myself going out and doing field research. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do a single documentary on Bigfoot. I started contacting people online, and in my area, I live in the New England area. So New Hampshire, there's a lot of trees and a lot of woods up here. And I didn't know the depth of how much history there is in this area, actually. I mean, this area has been, you know, it's where the Pilgrims came. So there's a long history of these kinds of encounters. I started talking to people and I said, oh, this is way too much, that I can't fit this all in one film. Right. So I kind of I would interview people. I would accompany other researchers on their outings and do that sort of thing. And I met a lot of great people along the way, and kind of just started putting them on YouTube and doing videos for fun. It was just sort of in my free time. I was doing other work. You know, that wasn't my kind of primary fascination. Even with filmmaking, I was doing other stuff on the side. That was just sort of, I don't know, I just really enjoyed coupling being out in the woods. I used to take some survival training and
Mhm.
naturalism. And so I always loved being in the woods and I love being outdoors. So I kind of combined 3 different passions with cryptozoology, filmmaking, and being in the
Right.
outdoors, and kind of having those skills feed off each
Mhm.
other. And somewhere along the way, I linked up with Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters. And for whatever reason, he wanted me to do a series. He entrusted me with doing my own series on the Lake Champlain monster,
Yeah.
which is the champ, aka champ of Lake Champlain in Vermont / New York, also borders in Canada.
Mhm.
Amazing story. One of my favorite cryptids. I really like aquatic cryptids, even though they're a little bit tricky to research. I always say
Right.
Bigfoot's kind of my favorite thing to look into because, especially in North America, I mean, wherever you go, you can run into different stories, right? You go to Fouke, Arkansas, or you go to Northern California, or wherever you're going to have
Right.
stories. Whereas champ is only in one area. I mean, there's only one champ. You know, there's other lake monsters, sure, but I did that series in 2017 / 2018, and then kind of just did stuff with Seth. And all along, I mean, I was getting out in the field with other researchers and sort of kind of grew a liking to wanting to actually research for myself and kind of apply some of my skills. And that's when the kind of it was around 2020, 2021 when Seth and I kind of were talking about doing just a series where it was sort of my own thing. I could do whatever I want and just kind of research some of these cases and see what I can come up with. And it was kind of like a dream come true. I could just do any of these sorts of stories. And I started sort of local, but then we moved to other areas. And that series is now called Bigfoot Beyond the Trail, or Beyond the Trail. It's probably what people will be most familiar with in terms of my work. And it's on the Small Town Monsters YouTube channel. And it's been amazing. We've been able to go to so many crazy and awesome locations, beautiful places all across North America. And we're only adding to that list. So it's been really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow.
So some of the, okay, let's just start at the end here. How did you end up in Alaska?
Oh, that's a good question. So Alaska's always been on my radar. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Alaska, right? I mean, it's a very fabled sort of place. It's got kind of a mystique, even in North America. I mean, even in Canada, the United States, people say Alaska, and it just kind of rings differently, right?
Yeah.
It's got that allure to it. What had actually happened was I got contacted by somebody who was originally from my neck of the woods in the Northeast, and he said, hey, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I have a separate YouTube channel that I would do a live stream on every week, where we would just discuss cases and projects and that sort of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And we were discussing a case in kind of my local area, and this guy hit me up. He actually used to live not far from there, but he's been living in Alaska, and he says, I created this cabin. I built this cabin out in the middle of nowhere, Kenai Peninsula. It's over an hour boat ride from the nearest town. And this is the kind of stuff we've had happen. And it was rocks being thrown, seeing rocks being thrown, the wood knocks, screams, all kinds of noises. And they started recording audio. And that's some of the stuff he had sent me over. And this was in May of 2021, right around there. And I was just like, whoa, okay, this is, I mean, you hear a lot of alleged Bigfoot audio out there. Some of it good, some of it not so good. A lot of people put the Sierra sounds kind of on I don't want to say gold standard, but in terms of audio, it's either a really good fake or it's a really compelling. It's pretty. It's not like this is a coyote for sure. Or a lot of audio ends up being coyote if it's distant or it's grainy. And this stuff reminded me of that immediately, of kind of some of the Sierra sound stuff. And I thought it was some of the more compelling stuff I've heard, especially when I found out that David Ellis of the Olympic Project was the one who analyzed some of the audio. He's somebody that I have come to know and really trust in terms of audio, because it's such a specific subset within Bigfoot research or even cryptid research, because audio is tricky. It's not as easy as people think. I mean, I don't know nearly as much as David. So that really intrigued me. And I came in, contact with Scott, the owner of the place, and we just kept talking, and we were trying to make a plan to come out there. And it wasn't until May of 2022, so almost a year later, that we ended up going out to the location. It's actually kind of funny that it was basically a year after I had talked to him, because it was always in my mind. We were doing all these other projects and going to other locations, but this was always in my mind. The cabin and that sort of thing. And we spent basically around 9 days out there in May, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, that's some of the footage that you got. I do got to throw one thing in. So part one, you put that out, and I'm a person that binge watches. I like to know what's going on, and then like left me hanging.
Yeah, I know. I know it
Yeah,
was
that
originally.
wasn't fair.
Yeah,
That wasn't fair.
I think originally it was only going to be one kind of documentary, maybe a long one. But as I started editing, I said, "There is no way this is going to be 4 hours long by the time I'm done with it." So we kind of decided, all right, we'll just chop it and kind of do that sort of thing. And I don't really like cliffhangers, but I think it wasn't too bad. I've been let down before with other cliffhangers in terms of having to wait for shows or something 6 months, but it was about a month in between. But it was the only way we could conceivably cover the whole kind of topic. And we filmed over 1,000 gigabytes of footage when we were out there. We had multiple cameras, and there's 3 of us filming all this other stuff. So it was a lot to sift through. So it kind of was nice to be able to just really wholeheartedly focus on the first part of the journey, and the second part was sort of the continuation.
Yeah, well, it was an incredible film. What when you were out there, did you?
It was.
What is the best piece of evidence that you think that you got while you were out there in Alaska?
So it's tough to say. I wouldn't consider any of it really evidence that I would say passes sort of without a doubt sort of in terms of being Sasquatch or something unknown. I really try to be as stringent as I can with what I claim as evidence and that sort of thing. And I can't be certain. I can just kind of assume or have either theories or ideas about what something might be based off of certain behaviors, kind of speculate. But some of the handprint we got out there was interesting. And the thing about a handprint is there's 50-50 chance it's either human or it's not.
Right.
It's not like it was a moose or a brown bear. It was clearly something human-like. So that really limits it to, if we're talking about just known animals, it's either a human being or it's some sort of an ape, like a gorilla. Yeah. But there's no gorillas in Alaska or any other known ape. So again, that's a 50-50 chance on that one. So that's what I think was pretty interesting. And then some of the audio stuff we got, it was typical sort of wood knock and rock kind of things. But where the sort of first episode ended, we had that where it was kind of the cliffhanger. That was probably the most interesting night, where we were just hanging around outside on in this fire pit, which was away from the main cabin, and all of a sudden, we're just kind of talking, doing whatever humans do, just goofing off. Rob Roy, one of the funniest guys, was just keeping us entertained out there, one of the guys in the film. And all of a sudden I hear a very clear wood knock come from my right. I kind of tell everyone to kind of shush for a minute. And then we just start hearing what sounds like I can only interpret it as rocks falling or being propelled, hitting other rocks on the way before they hit the water, and you could hear limbs and stuff being hit too. So it wasn't just a straight splash where you could say, okay, maybe a sea lion jumping in the water.
Right.
You would physically hear stuff towards the top of the hill, crash, smash, and then plop in the water. So that's based off of the things that a lot of the folks that have been out to that cabin have experienced, including seeing football-sized rocks flying in horizontal patterns out of the woods into the water. That is sort of typical for there. So I'm not trying to assume that that's what it was, but that's the closest thing we could guess to what it sounded like. And it just kind of came in this quick burst. And then there was another very clear wood knock. Best way I could describe it, hollow baseball bat. It sounded very similar to this kind of percussion instrument that they have there, which I think is interesting. And that was just kind of a burst of activity, and then it was just done. And we're scanning with thermals and looking all around. But we have this big hill, and we're kind of disadvantaged because that area is so thick with moss and trees, and there's a big hill that you could basically be up at that hill looking down at the fire pit and barely be seen. So if anything is up there, we tried it out by going up there and physically looking down at the camp at the fire and saying, what are the chances? So that was interesting. There was other stuff like these mystery gunshots we heard were also very weird. They would happen at times when things were happening. So, for example, I heard one myself, but the second day we were there, after arriving there, the second day we decided to go across the bay. And this is in a very rugged mountainous area of Alaska for folks that haven't seen. You've got rainforest and just these huge 3,000 foot peaks just on all sides. Still very snowy at that time of year. We were across the bay, got dropped off by boat, took a Zodiac, little kind of paddle boat, and went out there. And we're trying to find these old cabins. There was supposedly an old settlement out there. We found a cabin that looked like it was maybe 10, 15 years. Nobody had been there. So a little bit more recent. I mean, there are people that do have these cabins in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. And as we were coming back, we noticed as we get out to the shore to get back on the Zodiac to row back to the side of the bay where the cabin is. And we see the boat is already halfway towards us with the guys that dropped us off. And they said, "Did you guys shoot a gun?" And we said, "No, why would we do that? I mean, we were armed because you're in a place that has brown bears and moose and very aggressive animals, or, animals that can easily kill a human, but we wouldn't shoot unless we had a reason to."
Sure.
And they said, "Oh, well, one of the reasons we came out here was because we thought we heard a gunshot and we decided to come get you guys, maybe thinking you were in trouble."
Right.
They said that it was right when we got out to the shores when that sound came about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, it could be a coincidence, right? Interesting timing. The other time was a few days into it. I think it was, I want to say day 5 or 6. I don't recall. It's in the documentary though, part 2. We were all taking a nap, and it was a foggy, spooky kind of day. And I went outside after taking a nap to just go get footage of kind of the ambiance. And I just hear what sounds like a gunshot. Just when I stepped out and I set up my camera, and then I hear a gunshot. And I'm like, there shouldn't be anybody out there because, I mean, we would notice. I mean, you're in such a remote area of all places in North America to be, I mean, via you literally have to get there via boat, you would kind of know. And I thought that was interesting. So I go inside, and one of the guys says, "Did you just hear that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I just heard 2 more as you walked in." And I didn't hear that. So that was a weird one. I mean,
yeah.
And then telling Scott, the property owner, he says, "Yeah, well, we hear that kind of stuff all the time. They call it the power knock from the hollow baseball bat up on the hill or whatever." And he says people hear that sort of stuff, and then relaying those sounds. And I literally was filming when I captured it, so I have it on audio on my camera. And giving that to David Ellis, who then was able to say, "Well, the thing about gunshots is the signature of the audio is typically there's actually 2 blasts, but our ears make it sound like it's just a one continuous sort of sound. Whereas if you look at it in a spectral analysis, so spectrogram, you'll see kind of 2 blasts, kind of close to another, but they sound the same to us. Whereas these sounds were just a singular sort of noise." Wow. So I don't know. I mean, people said, "Well, was it glacier ice breaking from a glacier that was over 10 miles away?" I mean, it's awfully coincidental. So I don't know. This is the thing. Right. I'm not suggesting what it is. I really have no idea, but it's just weird that it would happen.
Yeah. Could you kind of like pinpoint like an area? Was it behind you, or like, out towards the ocean, or you couldn't kind of pinpoint which way
it's tough because it's the bay is almost an amphitheater.
Gotcha.
We're on. So, I mean, if it's sort of a semicircle, we would be on one end of it. So, I mean, you create, if one of us was to shout off the deck, 2-3 seconds later, you'd hear the echo of it across the bay.
Right.
And it's just the sound, it's sort of distorted. So it's hard to tell which side it was. I just heard it. I mean, to me, it sounded kind of like it was from behind me, but I don't know if that was the distortion from the bay or not. But they have described it as they've heard it on the hill above them when they've been facing. Wow. I was facing towards the bay, but in previous years, they've described being down at the fire right below the cabin and physically hearing it coming from kind of right behind the cabin. So I couldn't say which direction it was from, but I mean, it was.
Did at any point, did that worry you that you couldn't tell where the sound was coming from? I mean, that would make me nervous, I think.
Not really. I mean, it was just sort of, I actually initially really thought it was a gunshot, and that's why. And then I remembered what on the second day that the other guy had heard, and that's the reason why they came out to get us. And it didn't really worry me. It just kind of was. I was very intrigued, and I thought, okay, I mean, is it an avalanche going on, or what's the logical explanation? I always try to find the logical explanation before I jump to something weird. And even now, I just can't say what it is. It was just unusual. We got it on audio. I mean, you can hear it. It literally sounds just like a gunshot. Yeah. So.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Brown George says that I like that Alex uses the singing bowls.
Hey, that's Glenn. What's up, man? Yeah, we tried that out. I mean, sometimes we'll just try different things. The idea there was taking some singing bowls and putting them out there and just saying, hey, if somebody wants to mess with it, we'll just leave an audio recorder here and see what happens. And nobody took up the offer, but one of those days, I hope.
So did you have any luck with the singing bowl? And the reason that I ask is because here a couple weeks ago we were at the LBL and Brandy brought hers, and we did try that.
Yep.
You know, we didn't hear, get any replies or anything, but did you guys have any luck with it? Or
I mean, we didn't hear anything, and we would do a lot of audio. We leave audio recorders out all the time. I mean, it was a nightmare going through the amount of audio we had from 9 days of almost continuous audio, but nothing that I could tell anything that sounded like that. It would have been interesting, because if you did record a sound like that, you would know that something is messing with it, whether it be, if it just knocks over, you hear a couple dings, it could be a bear, it could be a porcupine. But if that sound starts going, you have something that's actually physically handling it. Yeah. And that would then, if it was left, we'd be able to say, okay, well, maybe we can get some fingerprints or dust it or identify anything that might be on it. It was just kind of a curiosity thing. Sometimes we just like to mess around, and we've had luck other times getting potential activity by doing strange things, playing weird music or light shows. And we tried all kinds of strange stuff just to, whatever these things are, if Sasquatches are indeed there, I think they're pretty curious. Most of the reports I've heard of, like almost, I'd venture to even say half of them are people just doing normal people things, and campers either having some kind of thing happen to them. The other portion tends to be a road crossing, or somebody just randomly hiking and seeing one cross the path in front of them. Whereas the other, and that's sort of the uninitiated, I guess, but the other is where it seems like something is coming in to check out your camp or mess with you in some way, or your property, whatever. So that was the kind of philosophy behind just trying out weird stuff like singing bowls.
Real quick, I want to answer this question. He's kind of funny. He said, do you all have in your contract agreement that you can't change your hair color now? So we don't have a contract. We're all just friends here. However, we all do dye our hair. and I've been blonde for probably the last 35 years. So I don't plan on changing my color. What about you, Brandy?
And I've been blonde since birth.
I've been blonde since birth.
I actually was blonde when I was a
is.
child, believe it or not.
Yeah. A lot of people.
No, I believe it.
Now.
I believe it.
Yeah, my mom is blonde, and I still have a blonde streak somewhere in my hair. You can kind of see it there, but people they don't believe it because it's the dark stuff, and it's like I used to, all the pictures when I was a kid, I was super blonde.
Right. my two grown kids, they're both blonde, and they're still blonde. So honestly, I have a lot of red in my hair, but anyway, that's another topic. I just wanted to answer his question real quick.
And the other thing is that's why we leave it open. We got blondes and boos. You could be a boo.
Yeah, right.
No, not a boss says Jessica and I will be bringing the brunettes to the show next week, and that's right, she is.
Yeah, see, we got boos in the chat. Look at there.
There we go.
I have a question about the females that were going in the woods here and the babies crying. What did you ever figure out what that was all about?
So that's something we really we haven't gotten to the bottom of it. We'd love to play up on that angle. So we're actually hoping to go back. Well, we are going back this coming summer to that location, kind of nicknamed Area A. And we will be bringing out some female researchers as well, just to kind of see what happens. I mean, because that's part of the interesting thing. Those recordings to me were some of the creepiest that I had originally been sent by Scott. And the story was intriguing because, I mean, there's only been a few times that women were brought out to the property there, primarily because, I mean, Scott and his buddies kind of built this cabin to be a fishing cabin getaway, hardcore Alaskan woods stuff. I mean, maybe the wives will come out every once in a while, but it's, that's not what a lot of people want to do, is go spend their weekend really roughing it out in a very remote location that could be potentially life-threatening. But the two occasions they did bring women out there, both of those times they heard baby crying, the second time of which was the recording of the audio where Scott's wife and her friend independently heard this sound and then told each other about it. And they were kind of aware of it. Scott had mentioned it and they didn't want to tell him. And they finally kind of reluctantly told him. And he said, well, I have it recorded if you heard it. I have it recorded right up in the woods. And that's where that audio comes from. And I mean, to me, it's interesting. I can't say definitively what it is. I've tried to match it with other animals. A lot of people suggest fox or maybe a porcupine baby crying or otters, all kinds of things. I haven't found anything that matches perfectly. If anyone thinks they have something, like, let me know, please.
Yeah.
But the coincidence factor is interesting. They've never heard any sound like that. And they've been going back this was the 4th or 5th summer in a row going there. They've never heard anything like that. It's only happened on 2 occasions when women were there. Wow. I mean, it's stretching the coincidence factor. I can't say definitively, obviously, but it's just interesting. So we didn't, I don't even know why we didn't think about playing on that angle this past time. But afterwards, it was a challenge, because we hadn't been to this location before. So a lot of the planning, you have to do pre-planning. And then when you're done with the trip, you're kind of like, oh, well, I would have done this differently, or I would have done this. And that was one of the big things that I said, okay, next time we go, we absolutely want to kind of try out some new stuff and see, maybe, hey, 3rd time's a charm. Maybe you get something like that again. And then you can say, okay, you can start drawing sort of patterns and saying, all right, well, there's something is responding to a female presence for whatever reason. Would it be normal wildlife? I mean, that's unusual in itself.
I've heard that before where I don't remember what show or whatever I heard that on, but where people did hear babies crying. Now, I don't remember if it was just women, but I find that interesting,
I've heard that before from other folks in parts of Appalachia talking about hearing babies crying sounds, that sort of stuff, but never in this context. And what's really interesting about it is this was going on in this cabin. And actually, a lot of Alaskan Native stories, they talk about what's called the Kushtaka, which they describe as the otter man. And the only reason they call it the otter man is because it's kind of a hairy creature that swims in the water between, mainland or islands. They don't, people think it looks like just like a giant otter. Apparently, no, it's just a hairy kind of humanoid thing that swims. And they say, oh, it's like an otter because otters swim. And to my mind, I thought, well, that could be a Sasquatch. I mean, you've got reports up and down coastal British Columbia, Vancouver Island, into Southeast Alaska of Sasquatches being seen swimming. And we know bears and mountain lions and moose and other animals have been documented swimming even in salt water to get from one island to another. Deer, elk will do it too. Why wouldn't a Sasquatch do it? I mean, it's easy for us to say we can just do it with a boat, but if you don't have that capability. So those stories, they talk about the Kushtaka, the First Nations people up there, but they describe it as crying like a baby in the woods to lure women in. That's kind of part of that story, which I thought was really interesting. And then while we were out at the cabin, Seth Breedlove and the rest of the Small Town Monsters crew were filming what's called On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Last Frontier, which is kind of a companion piece film that just came out, where that's more of a broad look at the Alaskan Bigfoot phenomena as a whole. I think the most expansive in terms of coverage that's ever been done. Alaska hasn't been focused on all that much in terms of films and research. There's not very many people up there researching. And there's a few good ones, but there's only 700,000 people for a state that's a third of the continental United States. So really, it's a small world in terms of people up there in a large place. But they interviewed some Native American folks as well up there who talked about that being part of their lore, hearing baby crying noise and being warned not to go in the woods. That's the hairy man. That's the Kushtaka. So I thought it was really interesting that Scott, who is not connected to those cultures, just happens to own this property out there. And that's one of the weird things they've experienced. While you've got people saying this is part of their lore that goes back thousands of years, I thought that was pretty intriguing. So that is definitely something we want to kind of investigate and play up on, and just kind of see if there's any kind of experimentation or anything that can lead to more of that, because capturing more audio of that would be pretty intriguing to be able to compare it to the original.
Do you guys plan on going back to that particular location again?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is, we kind of know the area now. It's again, as I was mentioning, when you're planning, you're using maps that are very outdated or even Google Earth. Just some areas of the world, if you look on Google Earth, are not very detailed. There's not a lot of satellite imagery. So it's tough to try to imagine a place. And I'm basing it off of what Scott and the other guys that have been out there, like Rob Roy, have been talking about, the terrain. So I can only guess. So now that I have an idea of what it looks like, we circumnavigated that whole sort of area. I know kind of areas I'd like to target more and things we'd like to try. So that location, because seems to have produced interesting activity for a number of years, by, whether it be Rob Roy going out there or researchers like Larry Beans Baxter, or others that have been out there have experienced, rocks thrown, that sort of weird sort of stuff. one potential sighting as well of a guy who was a hunter. I mean, biologists have been out there. Other people, other researchers as well, have all had kind of strange experiences. And it's not just one of those things, oh, they're going out to a location and they're kind of priming themselves up to be ready to experience weird stuff. I mean, some of the stuff, it's hard to make it up. So we tried to really stay focused and say, okay, we don't want to just have wishful thinking every weird sound you hear. And that's generally my approach in general, is to really try to stick to only what I can verify and kind of establish as, okay, was this that animal? Was that? Without making a really bold claim, oh, that's definitely a Sasquatch right there.
Right.
I mean, unless I see the thing run out, I can't say that. Even then, I would probably question myself as a researcher, and I would talk to folks who could grill me and make sure my story is actually what I claim it is.
Yeah. Have you actually ever seen a Sasquatch?
I have not, no. I've had some weird experiences that I just can't explain.
Sure.
Something throwing 7 different objects in your direction, and then kind of it just isn't there anymore. You kind of try to go look for it. I mean, we're really disadvantaged in a lot of these areas too, because we're so slow moving as humans. But just weird experiences, wood knock, very clear wood knock encounters of whatever it is. I mean, I don't know what could be wood knocking, but in some of the situations I've been 100% certain I'm the only person, or just me and my people are the only ones in that area. And we're hearing some of these weird sounds and, whoop-like sounds, and some of the kind of unusual noises that are typically associated with purported Sasquatch behavior.
Right. I've been watching the chat, and they say that you have a new one coming out from Florida, but I know you guys already got one out from Florida.
Yeah, we've actually have, I think, 4 out from Florida. We did a whole crazy road trip last year from Florida to North Georgia, South Florida to North Georgia, basically Miami to the mountains of North Georgia. And on the way, we went to kind of the Everglades, Big Cypress area, the Green Swamp, Ocala National Forest, and sort of the Panhandle area. And then had a disastrous expedition in North Georgia where we got rained on for 3 days straight. With just pummeled in January, early February, I think. Yeah. Because we weren't prepared for it. We'd come from Florida, and we were like, okay, that was a bad one. But yeah, I just came back from Florida last week. I was down there with my buddy Tate Hieronymus, who was with us last year on our expeditions. And we went to some areas of South Florida, in particular, where the skunk ape kind of legend comes from. I mean, it's actually a really interesting area. You have the Everglades National Park, Big Cypress National Preserve, the Fakahatchee Strand Forest, the Picayune Strand Forest, the Florida Panther Refuge. And that area combined it's almost 3 times the size of the state of Rhode Island. That's protected land. There's a lot of marshland, a lot of woods. It's habitat for the endangered Florida panther. And that's something we were actually looking for there as well. And we found tracks, and we cast a ton of tracks actually from out there. And they're basically a mountain lion. They're not a subspecies, but they're basically a mountain lion that's adapted to live in the swamplands and the prairies of South Florida. And they're very endangered. So this habitat supports them, bear, tons of deer, alligators, snakes, all sorts of critters. It's like the Australia of North America down there, with all the creepy, crawly critters that can kill you, and reptiles and all that sort of stuff. But we spent some time down there looking for skunk ape and the Florida panther.
Did you guys, what, out of all the places you've been, what is the one that you felt most threatened, be it the terrain or the animals? Where did you feel like, wow, I mean,
that's a tough one. I've never really think that I've felt threat. I mean, if it comes to terrain and that sort of thing, definitely South Florida is one of the more difficult environments to operate in. And I give credit to, just in general, Florida researchers for getting out into these areas where, you're wearing boots with snake guards because you've got cottonmouth, all these venomous snakes, which there are quite a few. I mean, a rattlesnake, what is it? Not the cotton. There's another one, coral snake, very, very venomous. I mean, to the point where you're out in the middle of nowhere, slow moving. There's a lot of water, so you're moving through water. It's just a difficult terrain to operate in. I think I prefer more of a mountainous setting. I'm from the northern Appalachian Mountains, that's my sort of stomping grounds. Yeah. So the Appalachians, the Rockies out west, even Alaska. I mean, it was challenging, don't get me wrong, but that's more of terrain I guess I like being in. It's mountains just for me make a lot of sense. Whereas the swamps, I love them. Don't get me wrong. I love those environments in Florida. They're so unique, but they're very difficult to operate in, especially if you get a day where it's like when we were down there, where it's all of a sudden 85, 90 degrees with 70% humidity, and the bugs come out. Oof. And it's just January. I said, imagine this in July. So
Right. Yeah. And there's big bugs down there.
Oh, gigantic.
We're in Missouri. Brandy and
There's
I are in
huge
Missouri,
bugs.
and Letitia's over in Kentucky, and Florida's bugs. I tell you what, our Missouri bugs don't even compare to the Florida bugs.
They're scary. Yeah. I thought the ones we have up in the mountains in the summertime get bad, but we had a day or two where mosquitoes came out at night, which usually January in Florida, the humidity's low. It's pretty cold at night. I mean, you can get into the 40s, even 30s at night. Pretty nice. I prefer that. But these 2 days, it was a heat wave. And last year when we were in Florida, it was a cold streak where they had coldest weather in like 4 years. So we're camping in 20-something degree weather at night and in Florida, which is kind of a funny thing in itself. But this year we had that heat wave, and it was made some of the conditions undesirable, but just maybe kind of appreciate more people that do go out there in those environments. Because there's something there, because that is such a massive place in South Florida with so much habitat that it made a lot of sense to me that anything could really hide out there if we wanted to. I mean, the Florida Panthers certainly do. So, and bears, and we saw a black bear last year cross the road in front of us. And there's just a lot of interesting stories down there, very intriguing sightings and years of history. I mean, the skunk ape, people hear the word Sasquatch or Bigfoot and they hear skunk ape. It's kind of it's third in line, I'd say, for the most popular sort of big subset of Bigfoot.
Yeah. And it's Florida, at least I associate skunk ape with Florida, and like the Rougarou, with Louisiana.
Sure, right.
So, it's pretty
Don't
crazy.
forget the Momo.
Momo, Grassman. Yeah, there's a lot of ones, but skunk ape, something about it. It's just, as soon as you think of it, you think of those swamps in South Florida.
Yes, you do.
It's awesome.
Yeah. What have you ever been to Missouri?
I have not done. I've driven through there, but I have not done any research out there. I want to. I know there's a lot of good spots. My buddy Tate, he's kind of originally from there. He talks a lot about Branson, and there's a lot of Bigfoot attractions out in that area now. And there's other kind of stuff. But I've heard of stories in Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I've heard a lot of stories from those areas in particular.
I live actually about an hour south of where the big Momo sighting was,
Oh, right on.
Yeah. I'm about an hour south of there. So, and it's kind of weird because a lot of it, northern Missouri is flat and very boring. And southern Missouri, that's where you get into more of like the mountainous and the hilly terrain. And, the Momo sighting was where it was very flat and boring, a lot of farmland, a lot of crops. And, you would think they would be in more forested type areas.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I just, like I said, just having driven through there, I obviously had St. Louis ribs and stuff driving through there, good stuff. But I would like to get out there and the Momo film. So when Small Town Monsters did sort of our Momo film a few years ago, which was kind of part actual documentary, part Boggy Creek sort of homage sort of film. We filmed most of that in Ohio. I remember I was there for that, and we had Cliff Barrickman and Bobo from Finding Bigfoot, and they were the sheriff and the deputy, and they were wearing the 10-gallon hats.
I saw that.
It was just so much fun. And we're like filming this till 4 a.m. in the woods in Ohio. And it was supposed to be obviously similar to Louisiana, Missouri, in that area where those sightings happened. But Seth and them, they went down to Louisiana, Missouri, and did a lot of interviews in the local community and people who had actually had experiences. And I didn't get a chance to go down there, but like I said, people have been telling me, and I've been to Fouke, Arkansas. I know that's a little bit further south there, but I know Oklahoma, obviously the stories from the Wichitas, and then into parts of Missouri, and even not that far from Kentucky then, and sort of that area. And I'm a little bit familiar now with Kentucky as well, having been there just fairly recently.
Right.
Well, considering that Missouri is the cave state, that alone should intrigue anybody. With
that's
all
what with Kentucky. With Kentucky, that's what really intrigued me.
Kentucky
and Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, that whole area, there's just all these creepy caves, and probably so many of them out there that, just begging to be explored. I like caves. They're a little bit freaky, but I think they're pretty cool. I've been to some in West Virginia where you just kind of just go and start exploring on your own, and you see where you end up. And it can be a little nerve wracking at times, but it's kind of it's a fun sort of thing to do as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some few questions here, and I don't want to get too far into depth until
No
we
worries.
have to take our breaks, but I do want to talk to you about the LBL, and I would like your input on what you think like dogmen and different type of things are. So let's put a question up here real quick. Crystal J asks, do you ever think those creepy calls from the woods are from a Wendigo or a skinwalker?
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what a Wendigo is. I hear conflicting kind of reports. Talking to Lauren Coleman and other people in the Northeast who have kind of dealt with some of the Wendigo stuff, especially with the Native American perspective, with the Algonquian kind of language and those, and in the Midwest as well, where some of those stories come from. I don't know, because I've heard some people describe it as being like a Bigfoot. Other people say it's more of a supernatural thing that turns somebody into a cannibal. I know there's a Wendigo psychosis, which is described as somebody in the dead of winter turning to human flesh, maybe out of desperation. So I don't really know what that topic is. I mean, I've just kind of looked at it a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, those sounds to me, I mean, if we're talking specifically the ones in Alaska, they to me sound very similar to other alleged Sasquatch recordings from other parts of North America. So that's what I would lean more towards it being. But I mean, obviously I can't be certain.
Right. Somebody made a comment earlier, and I didn't start to go back, and I apologize to whoever asked that, but they made the comment, do you think that the Alaskan Bigfoot are more aggressive than the ones down here in the States?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stories there's some aggressive encounters in Alaska, but I personally didn't notice any more than I guess I did in other parts. I would almost say that there's probably more aggressive reports from the southern United States than even Alaska, at least from what I've noticed. I mean, if you look at like the stories of the Fouke Monster and some of these stories of kind of bluff charging and rock throwing, it seems a little more aggressive. I mean, those stories happen anywhere. I know stories from my own neck of the woods in New Hampshire where people have very frightening encounters where they're genuinely scared for their life with something. But in Alaska, I don't know if it has to do more with the fact that you've got some of these very remote areas in Alaska that I think maybe people aren't. I mean, if you, for example, in somewhere in the lower 48 of the United States, some national park or a forest, if there are Sasquatches in some of these areas, they might be more accustomed to people. So, I mean, the cost risk kind of analysis is, you attack a human. What does that usually bring? More humans. It brings a search party. It brings SAR, search and rescue, and all these helicopters and stuff. Do you really want that attention if you're kind of trying to mind your own business? Whereas it seems to be a lot of these encounters that happen on the fringes of civilization or really out of civilization, where people build a cabin or some sort of remote outpost. They have more aggressive encounters because maybe that's just a, hey, get off my land kind of thing.
That's what I was thinking.
There's certainly some of that in Alaska, but there's some of that in other places as well. I mean, the Ape Canyon story is a famous one, where there was a very aggressive sort of incident, and other stories that if we kind of take at face value, maybe tell us a little bit about possible behavior. I mean, obviously speculative, but I wouldn't say I noticed anything more aggressive. I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm not an Alaskan researcher. I don't want to at all allude that I am. I just know from the limited pool of stuff I've been told in Alaska, there are some frightening encounters. There's some that are normal, and as normal as seeing a Sasquatch could be, I guess. But they're sort of typical across the road, or I saw it, as it was walking down the side of the mountain. That doesn't really stand out in itself. It's not spectacular. Somebody seeing three and getting rocks thrown at them, right? It's they're like on a different tier in my mind in terms of behavior, because it's it's like it's one thing to be attacked by a mountain lion, another thing to just see one going up the hill. Obviously, one of those stories is probably going to be more talked about than the other.
Yeah,
I was thinking, that like whenever they built the new cabin in Alaska, and then you said that there would have been several people there. Maybe they didn't like the fact that they was taking over their territory, with all the different smells. And, I don't know if that has anything to do with all the things that was happening to you guys.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that when they first started building the cabin, it was literally the first day they went out there to clear trees just to have a plot of land to put it on. That's when they started stuff happening. And that first summer, it was constant. I mean, to the point where something large, it had to have been large, physically pushed this piece of plywood that sent a 70-pound Yeti cooler, ironically with the Yeti name, but the Yeti cooler flying across the room and hit the other side of the room. And they thought it was a bear. They're all getting shotguns and getting ready to kind of confront whatever it is. And they hear what sounds like bipedal footsteps going up the hill. And it was pretty constant. I mean, I don't know. I've heard of other places where that sort of encounters happen, where it's maybe more aggressive at first.
Yeah.
Because it's just somebody setting up shop in your backyard. Do you really want that there?
Yeah. Real quick, I'm gonna have you answer this, and then we'll take our break. But Nana Boss asks if you are going to the Ocala conference.
No, I'm not actually. That's the Florida Bigfoot Conference. I went to it last year because we were there kind of right around the same time. So it was awesome. We got to go and film a little bit and featured it in one of our films. But it looks to be a pretty fun event. But unfortunately, I won't be there. I have other plans in April.
Yeah, gotcha. Are you going to the Gatlinburg Bigfoot one in July?
I'm not sure as well on that one. I was a speaker at that last year, and that was an absolute blast. I got to do a night solo backpacking in the North Carolina side of the Smokies. Kind of did a night out there. It was a lot of fun in an area where there's been history reports. And then I spoke at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference, and it was a great event. I mean, so many cool people and lots of fun stories I heard. But I'm not sure if I'm going to the one in July. I know Small Town Monsters will be there. I think they will have a booth. So Seth and some of the gang. But I'm going to be in Alaska in June again. So I don't know if I'll be as willing to hit the road right away after getting home from being in Alaska for a couple of weeks, because we're doing an event actually up in Alaska called the Boreal Bigfoot Expo up in Fairbanks, Alaska. And we'll be showing actually some of the films there, and then it's a cool event. There's a lot of local researchers, and then Jeff Meldrum's also speaking, and a lot of the local Alaskan folks. We got invited, so we're going to use that opportunity to go to the event and then go back to the cabin after that.
Very cool. Well, we got to take a break. We're at the 52-minute mark, and tell the radio stations all goodbye. And if you guys want to continue listening, come over to Blondes and Booze on YouTube, and you guys can continue listening. If you guys just hold on, we got a 5-minute break, and we will be right back, because I know three of us all have more questions for you.
Exactly.
So we'll be back in 5 minutes, guys.
Four minutes to go, folks. 4 minutes. Three minutes. We're almost there. 2-minute warning, guys. 2-minute warning. One minute. 1 minute.
Hey, everybody, we're back.
Welcome back.
Hey,
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, at Nighthawk, it was 5 minutes. I hope you were counting.
Yeah, I was reading the comments too. That's hilarious.
He's been picking on me all night. I'm going to have to talk to him later.
Yeah. He's a good guy, though.
so can I ask
Absolutely.
one more question about the cabin?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So I remember somebody was talking about hearing whistle sounds and percussion sounds, and it's kind of crazy because when we was at the LBL the other night, we had a group of 10 of us there, and 4 people heard the whistle sound that he was
Yes,
talking
we
about.
did.
Do you have any idea what that might have been? Because we still don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we didn't hear anyone when we were out there, but I know some of the guys have said, and they've recorded. I mean, it's in part 1 too, the audio at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's some whistling or whistling sounding, and I've actually had a couple people tell me that's very similar to stuff that they've heard out in the woods. I had one guy from New York tell me that was similar to what he heard all out kind of doing Bigfoot research. So I can only speculate. I mean, I don't know if other primates can whistle. I think it's kind of an interesting sort of thing. So
Mhm.
I've heard it obviously come up with Sasquatch stuff all the time in terms of people hearing whistles and other sorts of things. But I wouldn't know. I can only speculate that if it sounds like purported Sasquatch behavior, maybe that might be what it is. But obviously I can't say one way or another without confirming it. Just another one of the mysteries, though, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you, too. Have you seen anything like been out there doing your research for Bigfoot? Have you seen anything like any weird like UFOs or even like orbs or anything like that in the area?
So I've actually seen a pretty interesting UFO in Pennsylvania. I mean, I was kind of there for Bigfoot, but long story short, I was with a group of friends of mine from the New England area, including one of them who's Paulino. He's kind of been more on the paranormal side of things. He's into ghosts and that sort of stuff. And he knew Ed and Lorraine Warren back in the day. Long story short, he's been doing a lot of ghosts and UFO sort of stuff. So not as much of Bigfoot, but there's an area of Pennsylvania that some of his readers had reached out and said they had a lot of weird stuff going on. There was like Bigfoot sightings, other things, UFOs, black helicopters seen in this part of kind of central Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a lot of these weird stories in general. I wasn't really this was back in 2019, I believe. I wasn't as big into the whole kind of triangle sort of stuff back then where there was multiple things going on.
Right.
I had heard about Bigfoot, and I had actually been there the previous year with them, and it was a very interesting location. It's, mostly farmland, hilly kind of terrain like Pennsylvania, but then there's these deep ravines with forests and environments where bears, excuse me, and deer and stuff kind of move through, and supposedly Sasquatch, because that's a lot of the stories. And I talked to other people like Eric Altman and Sean Forker had actually had experiences on that very property with some kind of weird glowing stuff years prior. And we were out there one night, crazy storm, and I was in a pickup truck by myself down at the end of a ravine by a house where these folks who had lived there for years had described hearing things mimicking their chickens, dinosaur-like sounds. That's the way they described it, sort of roaring. The mother had actually seen what she thought was a juvenile Sasquatch. So I was kind of posted at the bottom of this area, my pickup in a pickup truck, and just kind of sitting there. And it was pouring rain, and the other guys were in different areas, and we were kind of checking out this case. And then we decided to all meet up when the rain cleared up. Not a single cloud in the sky after that. I mean, you could see the stars. So we did some stargazing. We're up in this field, and we start seeing at one point just what I thought was the moon behind a cloud, but it was really weird because we hadn't seen the moon at that point yet. And all of a sudden, this cloud, it's like an illuminated cloud, and it starts moving through the air, kind of like meandering, like a leaf in slow motion is how I would describe it. If you were to take kind of slow motion footage of a leaf moving up and down. And we started watching, and we're like, okay, this is kind of weird. Two of the guys there, actually one of the guys is really into the UFO stuff. He kind of does, I think he's a psychologist by trade. He does a lot of like abductee interviews and that sort of stuff, or experiencer interviews. So we're all kind of intrigued, and we're all just staring at this thing. And I actually had a lens on my Canon camera at the time it was a fixed 10 millimeter lens that's used for star photography because it was such a beautiful night. So I couldn't zoom or anything with this lens. It was basically useless. Well, Paul runs back to the house, grabs this night vision goggles that he has, and our night vision unit just starts filming and manages to film this thing. And we're watching it, and it's just moving around, and these smaller, brighter lights fly out of it, around it, and back into it. And we're all like, whoa. Wow. And these guys, a bunch of them have been into UFOs for like 20 years. And they're like, I've never seen anything like this. Wow. I didn't really care that much about UFOs, honestly, until then. And it was like, okay. And we're watching this thing, and we watch it go across the horizon and kind of disappear. And then we're like, oh, that was really interesting. A few minutes of kind of intrigue. And then two of us saw, just like at a Star Wars, where they go into hyperspace and just a light just zip up into the sky, and that was it.
Wow.
And we were kind of like, okay. And we're like, Paul, you filmed that, right? And we're going through the footage, and he films it, and the footage is really weird because it doesn't look exactly like what we saw. But in the footage, you see this kind of like hazy object with a smaller object parallel to it the entire time, and it's very clear. I mean, we sent it to a guy who was a MUFON video analyst, and he says, like 95% of the videos he gets, he can explain as people filming, something that's normal. But he said this was really he couldn't explain it. And we knew what we saw. And I wasn't really into the whole topic. And that the night after that, we had another really weird experience that was like an auditory experience that I still can't explain. I don't know. I mean, basically it was in the same, we decided to kind of try to replicate that again the second night, but it was a cloudy night, so we couldn't see anything. But, after hours of frustration, we're all sitting around in this basement. The folks, we were there in their house, and they were above us sleeping. And we're in the basement. All of a sudden, we just start hearing this beeping sound, like just beep, just start going off. And I've got all my equipment on the table, and they're like looking at me. It's like, that's not any of my stuff. I'm like, Paul, what did you step on? I mean, there's all this stuff in the garage. So we're thinking, oh, maybe it's some kind of an alarm. There's a washing machine. We're checking that. And it's like the sound moves, and we go outside and you can hear the sound in the sky. It's a lot clearer than it was in the basement. And we're just kind of like, okay, really weird. And multiple people start recording on their phones and that sort of thing. And you can literally hear the sound moving in the clouds above, just moving. And it goes over to the left of us. There's a patch of trees, and all of a sudden, like somebody just pressed a button. It didn't fade out. It was just beep. It was like a hard cut that you could hear on the audio. So, I mean, it was weird. And it was around the same time as the thing we saw the night before. I don't know. I mean, I can't really explain it. As I said, I'm not really into the UFO stuff all that much, just kind of reluctantly, I guess now. Right. Which is funny. But we had a town hall meeting sort of a few days after that, where we like to talk to locals and gather stories. And, I'll always try to find Bigfoot stories, and other guys that were interested in more of other topics would get those stories. And we were so excited. We shared that story with people, and they were all kind of like, yeah, that happens pretty often around here.
Oh, wow.
It was one of those sort of funny moments. Okay, well, we think we're special, but I guess we're not. There's like 10-year-olds telling us about seeing unmarked black helicopters and all this other weird stuff in the area. So I was like, okay, all right, I get it. It was funny though. It was sort of it was kind of just we didn't even do any documentaries about it or anything. It was just sort of a trip that my friend Paul, who's the author, and some of his buddies, they had been working this case, and they just happened to invite me. And this was before I was doing the Bigfoot Beyond the Trail stuff. So I was just kind of like, hey, yeah, this 3-4 day trip to Pennsylvania, why not? And it was definitely interesting. I mean, I can only say it was a UFO by definition of the word, unidentified flying object. I mean, could it be secret government technology? Sure, right? I mean, but I know drones pretty well. I use drones a lot. My grandfather was a pilot. I know a lot about airplanes and that sort of thing. And this thing acted like nothing I've ever seen before. So that's all I can really say. So that was like one of the things I've seen that I was there mostly interested in Bigfoot, and that's what we had happen. So it was kind of funny like that. But in that area, there's a lot of weird stuff with more than just Bigfoot. As I said, there were people reporting other strange things there.
Sure. We we were all at the LBL here a few weeks ago, and we seen some kind of like creatures like peering from behind trees and that kind of thing. But then several of us at different times of the evening, we also seen orbs, which was weird, because there wasn't anybody out there. There wasn't any flashlights. There wasn't, everybody was there and accounted for in camp. So I just found that really interesting, and then Brandy, she actually seen eyeshine.
Yep.
So
it's interesting with the orb stuff. I've never seen anything that I could say is an orb. People have told me they have. And when we were actually in Florida, we were in North Florida with Stacy Brown last year and kind of his guys in the Panhandle. And I was with Stacy and Eli, and we were up kind of in a different area as my buddy Tate, Hieronymus, and RPG, Finding Bigfoot, and others were in a different area. And apparently a few of them, they had heard wood knocks that night as we were kind of doing two teams. And then Tate and one of the guys, James, claimed that they saw this blue thing fly through the trees, and they were like, whoa, what the heck? And I mean, we got the reaction on audio, but nobody was filming at the time. Nobody was really paying attention. Yeah. Two of the other guys were facing the other direction, didn't even see it. And all they had was their audio reaction. They were just like, whoa, and started cursing. Yeah. Tate is, the least into anything paranormal. So he's just kind of like, what the heck, How do you
that's kind of what happened with us when we were there that night. Letitia's husband, Barton, he was actually getting Martin Groves' story. Martin Groves was sitting in front of us, and Barton was filming, and he kind of moved the camera off to the hillside just to kind of, and you see it, he caught him on film, which is kind of cool, while Martin was telling his story, and several of us seen white ones. I seen what was reddish, orangish, and about the size of a beach ball to me is what it looked like. And, so there was all different, it was crazy, and fortunate that Barton was filming and we did capture,
Well,
so that's
Letitia, tell them what you experienced right there on the other side of your car. You thought somebody was walking up that hill?
Yeah, it looked like somebody was walking up from the bottom of the hill, and it kind of looked like a flashlight, but it was a smaller white light. And I was trying to get everybody's attention, but of course, everybody's talking and you can't get everybody's attention at once. But I seen it, and you could it was like it was walking. It was just bobbing up and down. Yeah. So I finally got my husband's attention, and I was like, come here, hurry up. We got the flashlights out, and we was all over looking around and never seen anything. Now, I don't know what it was. It could have been somebody out there with a flashlight, but I can't imagine somebody being out there messing around like that.
It's weird. I mean, another incident we had actually this last year, where we were in my state of New Hampshire. A buddy of mine, researcher here, him and another friend of ours had found these footprints, these kind of possible interesting footprints, right as the snow had thawed, and it was the animals were moving around. There was mud and just like on the side of the road, and we were following up in this area where we cast these prints a couple weeks before that, and there was 3 teams, and we had 3 teams of, I think it was 2 or 3 to teams. I mean, there's one team of 2 guys, one of 3, one of 2. We were spread out in this area, and we were hearing beavers slapping their tails, which sounds like rocks hitting the water.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Mhm.
And then two of the guys suddenly were like, oh, there's like the cops here or something. And we're parked in the middle of nowhere on a power line cut where our cars are. And we're like, what do you mean there's cops? And he's like, I don't know. There's somebody walking around with a flashlight. And they kind of described it as almost seeing like a whitish, bluish light kind of right near the parking lot. It was almost like it was moving or it was just stationary for a little bit. And then, we make it up there and I'm all kind of pissed off. I'm like we're going to get in trouble for what? We're not doing anything illegal. We're literally just, we're all doing our thing, walkie communication. And we get up there and they're like, there's nobody here. And they're like, well, what if somebody walked through the woods? I'm like, you think somebody walked through those woods? I mean,
Right.
And these guys were not that far from where this happened. So that was another weird one. I have really no explanation for that. I didn't see it at all. I just know from what, Evan and those guys were saying they saw. And we tried to do a recreation. They're like, no, it's too bright. It doesn't look right. I mean, I don't know. We didn't experience any other real activity, I think, that night. So I don't know. They really thought it was going to be somebody trying to kind of mess with us or maybe looking at our cars. So I don't know.
As Daryl just commented, he said we saw a red flash sphere also go by. And I mean, it was just kind of weird because we were all there and we would see things, but we were all seeing it. Some of us would see it by ourselves, but then other times we would see it together. So it was just crazy active from the time the sun went down until we left the LBL. It was pretty active. Do you have any plans of going to the LBL?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really done a whole lot of research into it. I know Seth and them, when they did American Werewolves, they interviewed Martin Groves and a bunch of folks in that area. They didn't really cover the LBL specifically. It was more general sort of Dogman related stories. I'm not so much as into the Dogman stuff, I guess, unless I come across it, but I'm more interested in typically the Bigfoot stuff. I know I've heard Jesse and Joe talk about LBL. I've seen some of their stuff. It looks like an interesting area. I mean, similar to other areas in Kentucky, I suppose, but I don't have any immediate plans. Because the problem is there's so many places I want to go that are on my list, and I have to pick and choose. So there's certain areas. What time of year is better to go to certain areas that you don't want to go to in the summer, or vice versa. A lot of the places in the mountains in northern areas now are 3 feet of snow. I mean, you're not getting anywhere efficiently. So I've got to pick and choose. So it's always kind of tough to figure out the roster of where I'm trying to go. And it's a curse and a blessing because on the one hand, I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to some of these places and really pursue this and be interested in it. But on the other hand, there's so many places you want to go that you can't go to. So it's on my list. I'll get there at some point perhaps, but
don't go in the summer. Do not go in the summer.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a very humid.
It is horrible. The ticks are horrible. I left there with about 500 seed ticks on me at one point. We was staying with Johnny Henderson and Gabby and Elijah Henderson. And I hadn't even been out in the woods really. We was walking in a rock bottom creek and it was just real dusty and dry. And when we got home, I had about 500 seed ticks on me and summer, no.
That is a horrible experience. I do a lot of ticks up here in New England and ticks. I love going to areas that don't have any. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Well, we were down there just a couple weeks ago and I found 2 on my husband and it is January?
Yeah, it was cold.
It was
Luckily,
really
when
cold.
I was in Kentucky, it was right after Cryptid Con, which was sort of right before Thanksgiving, and it was really cold. I mean, it was like 24 degrees at night when I was going out into this area. Jeff Waldridge had recommended, and so I was like, this is. Hopefully, I don't get any ticks on me, but I made it out unscathed that time. But there's a lot of times where you got in the woods around my neck of the woods, and I'm just it's not fun.
No,
they are evil creatures.
If I say if there's one thing I could completely exterminate, it would be the ticks.
Me too.
Sorry, but
Totally
sorry to
agree.
the animals that eat them, but hey, it's not worth it.
Yeah, if I had to choose between, I guess, mosquitoes and ticks, I would choose the mosquitoes.
See, we just had this debate in Florida with Tate, with my buddy, when we were out in Florida, and we're in the middle of this forest, and mosquitoes are just annoying. And I've got my thermal on a little monopod, and I'm trying to listen, and I hear stuff moving, and all I'm hearing is bzzz in the ear. And Tate's like, I would kill all mosquitoes. I'm like, you know what? As annoying as mosquitoes are, I think I'd still kill all the ticks.
Yeah.
He's like, no, mosquitoes, so it was like a never-ending debate, but
yeah, they're awful creatures.
Absolutely.
I think God had a sense of humor when he invented them.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I heard you say that you're not really like big into like the dogman phenomena. What are your views on dogmen and you know, do you I guess believe more so, you know, in the dogmen, and if so, what do you believe they are?
Sure. I mean, I what I say, I'm not really into it. Haven't really looked into it as much. I know. I mean, I've never really come across stories. I've come across a lot of stories of Bigfoot-like stuff, and I've gotten over 50 reports in my state of New Hampshire of Bigfoot-like stuff. And there's only one report where I wouldn't even say dogman because the guy said it was a Sasquatch, but my initial thoughts was a bear. He said he'd seen this thing scratching its back on a telephone pole, and it had sort of a snout, and it was like a cinnamon color with very charcoal black sort of skin. I thought, I mean, that sounds like a bear, right? Bear's rubbing itself on the telephone pole, but he said he thought it was a Sasquatch. He didn't describe any big ears or anything like that. So I wouldn't even say dogman, but I don't really, like I said, I don't know what to believe. The people I know that do look into it, and some of the stuff that I know Seth and others have done with some of the, you know, the Beast of Bray Road, Linda Godfrey kind of stuff, it seems almost more supernatural. You know, I would have a hard time personally believing that there's some sort of flesh and blood, undiscovered, upright canine that's just hiding out in the woods, and it's just completely biological. That to me sounds very far-fetched, to be honest. I would think it's probably something more unusual than that. Whereas I can believe that based on what I've seen in North America of habitat, that a species like a Sasquatch could easily hide. There's so much space still out there. I would have, you know, and I still don't know what Sasquatch is. I mean, I lean more towards the flesh and blood side, but I have people who have told me, and it's a minority of reports that have told me kind of the weirder side of things. And, you know, I don't discount that. I'm not like cherry picking the data, but I've never experienced anything like that. So, but again, like I said, with the dogman, it would be really hard sell to say that, you know, it's like an actual animal, like a wolf. It makes more sense that it's something you can't really explain, or something that's, you know, not, I don't know, maybe physical at times, but I don't know. I don't get into a lot of that stuff, but it's just very strange. You know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And some of the encounters seem like they're associated with other weird elements and feelings of dread and other strange things. Whereas with Sasquatch, it seems like reactions are across the board. I mean, a lot of people not expecting to see something like that, but like I said, I don't know what to make of it. It's, if I run across it or reports of it, you know, like I said, I'd probably pass it on to somebody who's more interested in it and say, hey, you know, Joe or Jesse, this is more of your ball game, you know, what do you think of this? Because I wouldn't want to assume. It's, like I said, it's not really my wheelhouse. So unless until I come across it, I guess, or if I do, you know,
and hope you have a camera with you.
That's the same logic as Sasquatch will apply.
Right, exactly. And you know, the thing is too, I think that, you know, people who believe there's, you know, either Bigfoot or dogmen are, you know, strictly flesh and blood, they haven't experienced anything else, the weirder side to it. You know, like I was that person that thought it was just strictly flesh and blood. And then, you know, 2 weeks ago, my thinking has changed. You know, why did I see these orbs, you know, out there at the LBL when we've seen these figures behind trees? What is this? You know, so honestly, my thinking has changed a lot in that. So I understand when people say they're flesh and blood, but that's what they experienced. You know,
I should say one thing, actually, correction. The only like dogman like thing I have looked into is the Rougarou. We did a show down there called Chasing Legends one time, just an independent documentary series, and we did an episode on the Rougarou. So I learned a little bit about that, but I almost differentiate that from like the other dogman sort of stuff because it's so rooted in the Cajun folklore, and it's got a lot of like Catholic kind of motifs in it. You know, the Rougarou, supposedly, if you're being chased, you throw 13 pennies at it because it can't count past 12, and it comes to get, if you become the Rougarou if you've sinned or if you have kept secrets. So it's very like steeped in that sort of, I would say it's more of an old world kind of werewolf-like story that you might see in Europe. And obviously the Cajuns probably carried that over through sort of the French ancestry. So that's the only one I've really looked into. I think it's a really awesome kind of story, and how it's so entrenched in that really unique culture down there in Louisiana.
Yeah. Louisiana has a lot of weirdness to it too.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, on all realms, even on the paranormal side of things,
Oh yeah. I mean, New Orleans, all the ghosts. I'm actually going back to Louisiana this year to do some stuff down there. And of course you got the story of the Honey Island swamp monster and
Mhm.
the Atchafalaya Basin, largest swamp in the U.S. A lot of weird stories from down there. Just a ton of interesting spots because it's so hard to get into some of those areas, especially.
Right, right, absolutely. I do have some more questions here. Let me pull some of them up. People asked. Um, this one is Pink Dahlia asks, "Oh, is anyone going to the UFO conference coming up in Illinois? I think it's Illinois, maybe Ohio. Do you have any plans of going there or anything, Alex?"
No, I don't think so. I'm not familiar with that. I don't know a whole lot about the UFO events. The only one I know is there's an Alien Con. That's about
Okay.
it. There was a local event in my area, New England, Greater New England UFO Conference. I used to do because they would do like a Bigfoot night, and they'd invite myself and others to speak on that. But I don't know a lot about those events. Unfortunately, again, with the schedule of trying to hit so many areas, I have to limit how many events I do too. So I'll
Yeah,
usually only do events that I can get invited to speak at or that
sure.
STM has some sort of a presence at. I mean, I've been to a lot of great events, but
Yeah,
I do prioritize getting out in the field a little bit over the events.
right, right. I
Well,
understand. I
there's
was
going to
going to
be
ask you,
one.
Brandy, what's that one called? Maybe that's the one that they were talking about that we're going to.
There's a UFO conference outside of Cape Girardeau, or it might be even being held in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which is right there in Illinois. That could be the one they're talking
Well,
about.
I was talking about that one in the Illinois one that you're signed up for.
SilCon is not UFO.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's not that one.
Yeah. Let's see here. Texas Front Porch is part of our group here. We stream through him and Bigfoot Michigan Rob and all that good stuff. But Tex says that he's going to be on your Dogman documentary.
Oh, that must be the Texas Dogman Triangle, I'd assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Aaron Deese was writing a book on it, and it turned into kind of a documentary adaptation through Small Town Monsters. So that's Seth and those guys have been putting that together. I'm more of like I feel like I'm a field reporter kind of guy. I'm usually doing that stuff on my own, and everyone
Right.
else is doing more of the other productions. But it
Right.
looks good. I've seen some footage from that. It looks really good.
Yeah.
It'll
I
definitely
look
be
forward
interesting.
to it. Yeah, for sure. So this one I think is meant for you. And says Alex, how long have you been sporting that beard? I'm experiencing beard envy. No, I don't have a hair fetish, people.
That's funny. Yeah, it's been a while now. I mean, I've been going with some sort of facial hair for a long time, but probably since at least I want to say 2018 that I've been doing the full beard. And I just kind of let it go, and then if I get bored, I'll trim it down a little bit and just kind of let it do its thing. Just kind of
Yeah.
it protects me from the elements, I suppose.
Don't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what? I got to tell you, if I could grow a beard and be out in the winter, then heck yeah.
Why not, right?
And then Penny Van, she says that Portlock, Alaska is a very scary and gruesome Bigfoot history. Yes, very much so.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. I mean, I know Larry Beans Baxter, a researcher in Alaska, he wrote kind of the book on that case, and a lot of people would be surprised. Actually, I think there's certain TV programs that sensationalize a lot of those events, to put it nicely, where I don't really see a lot of credibility with some of that sort of stuff, as you shouldn't really with a lot of TV programs. That's
Right.
just me as an indie creator saying that. I think there's a lot of people who run those programs that maybe necessarily don't have the truth in their best interest in
Right.
terms of showing that to folks. But I think people, there's stories of the hairy man, the Nantinak in Alaska, but people be surprised. A lot of the stories from Portlock actually have more to do with kind of, I think personally, there was accidents and things that happened with people, and they sort of blamed it on Bigfoot or hairy man at the time, because this town of Portlock or Port Chatham was economically dying. Like there was a lot of coastal communities in Alaska that were set up, after the U.S. had purchased Alaska, and these people were really living rugged lives. I mean, it was a tough life, either logging or fishing. And then all of a sudden, those economic opportunities start drying up, Alaska starts doing oil, a lot more money in that. Why are these people going to break their back out in the middle of nowhere where they're 3 hours from the closest town? And those communities dried up, and Portlock was one of those communities that started fading economically. And I don't doubt there probably were Bigfoot sightings if there are Sasquatch-like creatures in the Kenai Peninsula, which I think the perfect habitat. So that probably is something that happened. And I know a lot of the natives that lived in that area too talked about that. And as I said, the story got kind of conflated. And I think there's a lot of, things that aren't necessarily true about that case, at least in my view, and the folks that have really looked into it. Like, I would recommend Larry Beans Baxter's kind of look at that. And because you have the extremes on both sides. On one side, the skeptics will say it's all garbage. There was never any Bigfoot stuff. The town just died because they were building a highway or something really silly like that. On the other side, it's this extreme Bigfoot killed everybody, and that's the reason the town died off. The truth is, I think, somewhere more in the middle, where the town was struggling, and there probably were Bigfoot sightings and that sort of thing going on. But I wouldn't say it was solely because of Bigfoot that the town crumbled economically. There were other circumstances, but it makes for a good story, and that's what people like to latch on to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Let's see. I guess this is a question for me, but Tate, I am located outside of the St. Louis area, and Brandy is down in not Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff area in Missouri. So that's where the areas we're from. And then Pink Dahlia.
Yeah, 32 miles from Arkansas.
Yeah. You can, Pink Dahlia, you can message us or send us an email at blondesandbooze@gmail.com and we can chit chat. But yeah, most definitely. Alex, where can people find you? I know you guys got a lot of cool stuff coming up, and you just did a live show right before you came on here. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I wanted him to talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. We did our annual Kickstarter, which is sort of a something. This is the 9th one that Small Town Monsters has been doing, and it's a crowdfunding every year to help the productions, and the money goes towards getting all those productions done that people love to enjoy. And then also the bigger part of it, in my opinion, is it allows people to get personally involved. So you're not just giving money to have stuff made, but you actually, there's different tiers you can back at, and you'll get the DVDs or the Blu-rays, whichever one you pick. You'll get the shirts. There's like statues of creatures. There's all this sort of behind the scenes sort of stuff that comes with it. So it's kind of like their perks and their rewards. And basically back at any level, and you're going to get your name in the credits of these films. And so you're kind of helping them really go along, because we're an independent production company, so we don't have some giant network that's funding us and telling us what to do. And if people like seeing independent content, whether it's my stuff or some of the stuff that Seth and others do, whether it be Dogman or other topics, if they like that sort of stuff, is a great way to be a part of it and help promote that sort of thing, because we're not beholden to these networks. We're not being told what to do. We basically are doing what we think the topics are, and we all enjoy the topics. So I mean, the way I try to cover the topic is the way I would like to see it portrayed, which unfortunately I think you see that in a lot of mainstream programs, because they don't have any kind of truth. Really is not the primary interest. So
right.
That's the thing with the Kickstarter. And I'm not trying to toot our own horn. I mean, there's other producers that are independent out there doing a great job too. And I think we all kind of help each other, whether we like it or not, because we are competing against those big productions and those big companies.
I agree with you on that. Here, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago, Blondes and Booze was offered a TV show, and we turned it down. It just several reasons, but one of it is, it goes by their rules, and we have friends in on a lot of these big TV shows, and a lot of the times, they're sitting in the dark, and we've been told, there's a lot of sensationalizing going on, and we're not about that. We're not about faking anything or, nothing like that.
There's a lot of strings attached. Yeah.
Scripts you have to follow.
Yeah, right. And there's, reshooting things, and there's all sorts of stuff. I've had some run-ins with TV in the past, and it's always left my kind of a bad taste in my mouth.
Right.
Just seeing some of the things and some of the sort of exposés and some of these more popular shows, stuff like Finding Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff and Bobo and those guys, I give them full credit because they'll tell you, hey, this is what they tried to do. They tried to get us to do this stuff and we refused. You don't hear that with a lot of the other programs out there. So I think for me, a big inspiration is a lot of the stuff that came before reality TV was popular, because reality TV ruined a lot of things, because producing a reality TV show is a lot cheaper than doing a show like Monster Quest. Where you got to pay for lab tests and all this other stuff. You know, all this, there's a lot more expenses. It's just, it's more in depth, you know. So the stuff that I grew up on, the In Search Ofs, the Animal X, the Monster Quest, that sort of stuff, you don't see as much of that anymore. So we try to, that's the stuff that inspired me. And that's the kind of way I like to sort of go down. I'm like, this is the way I would like to see things made. But unfortunately, nowadays, you don't see that from the network. So this is not turning into a network bashing thing. I'm just, this is the way I see things. And I think, I hope people realize that.
You know, and I'm sure that, you know, if one pops up where they're like, hey, we'll give you this, this, and this, and that sounds like everything you want, you'll take it. It's just right now, it just seems like they're over exaggerating a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, either that or downright faking stuff. And I mean, we've actually, I'm not going to say certain programs, but some of the stuff we've done in some of our videos have then months later shown up in some of these shows as techniques that researchers do. And I mean, I find that to be imitation's the best kind of flattery, because we're literally dudes in the woods just kind of doing our thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not some elite researchers. We're just normal people that have an interest in the topic. And I think it's funny because I know these production companies, they will scour the internet and see what's going on and what are people doing and what are some of the things that are popular now in the communities. And that's the sort of stuff they bring into their meetings and want to then put into these programs that it's a lot of it is scripted. So so it's just that's what it is. And you know, just to end my spiel, like I said, we're doing the Kickstarter now, and it's just a great way for people if they want to participate. No one's forcing you if you don't want to, but if not, just check us out. We've got obviously a lot of productions, a lot of films that Seth and those guys do, and then the YouTube side of things. So they're a little bit different, but they complement each other. And my series, Bigfoot Beyond the Trail, you can see on YouTube, and that's you know, basically just kind of an open-ended show, and we go to a lot of locations and just try to interview folks. And you know, I don't go to a new place and assume I know everything about it. I want to talk to the locals there and the researchers and see what they know and what they can tell me. Maybe we'll be in the right place, the right time, and have proper equipment and be able to document something that can really move the ball forward a little bit in terms of the conversation.
Typically, when you do go to a new location, how long are you there for?
It depends. I mean, sometimes it'll be a few days, which is really not ideal. I think getting in a location for a longer period of time, like in Alaska, where we were there for almost 9 days. I mean, that really lets us get more familiar with it. But, you know, like I said, sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles. When I was in in Kentucky, I was only out in that area for like 2-3 days. So I kind of just barely got a feel for it. But we really try our best. Like I said, when we go out to an area, we'll consult with local researchers, people that I think have more of a handle of what's going on, because it's really arrogant for me to just show up somewhere. Like if I were to go to LBL and, I know what to do. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to talk to somebody who maybe is on the ground there for years that can tell me or tell me that what they do and that sort of thing. And that's kind of what I prefer, my sort of approach. Or if I don't have that option, I will just try to do my best in terms of research and triangulate an area and look for certain biological markers that say, okay, well, this is suitable habitat. You know, there's water sources, there's this, there's that. Maybe there's a history of sightings. I can go on the Bigfoot mapping project and plot out former sightings. Maybe they're still in the area. You know, there's a sort of, it depends on where you're going and what the kind of reason is, what the approach is. So
it makes total sense. When can we expect the next new show to come out?
So we usually about once a month, we got a Bigfoot Beyond the Trail coming out. So that's on YouTube. Usually, I mean, it depends. It'll be, you know, sometimes earlier in the month, later in the month. But you know, bi-monthly basis at this point. We've got about 24 episodes so far. So you can go check those out. We've been to so many different places, you know, whether it's Bluff Creek, Alaska, West Virginia, Maine, Florida. I mean, you name it. We're always adding new places. I'm hoping to add, you know, more places in the Midwest as well to our list. So
Very cool. Yeah, because like I said, I told you earlier, I like to binge watch, and I did binge watch all yours once I found you guys. That's been quite a while ago, but it's like now, man, come on, guys, put out a new one. I'm ready.
Yeah, there's always a few on the horizon, and there's other shows that or other kind of documentaries that are on the channel, on the Small Town Monsters channel as well, and obviously the feature films too that come out separately. So there's always something going on. There's one of us or a number of us are in different parts of the country just doing different stuff. So there's always something going on.
Yeah, gotcha. Brandy or Letitia, do you guys have any more questions for Alex?
You know what? I think he's pretty much answered everything I've got.
I know, right? Right. We
I didn't
definitely
even get to ask anything. I was like, geez, he just answered that one. Okay.
And I have
I've been told I talk a lot.
No, you're good. You've been great.
You were very thorough, which is awesome. Awesome.
We definitely appreciate you coming on and doing this for us. I mean, it's like I said, I've been pretty excited about this because I'm a big fan of your guys's.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I mean, it was a really fun conversation. I always like talking about, especially not just some of the new stuff, but I got to share my UFO story. Not a lot of people ask about that because everyone wants to know about the Bigfoot stuff. But that's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Yeah. And even the guys I was with, who were into the UFOs, that's the weirdest one I've ever seen. So.
Well, if you want to talk about weird stuff, here we are. This is where you come to talk about weird stuff, is right.
Right. No, so I appreciate the questions, and definitely a great conversation.
Yeah, and if you're up to it, maybe in the fall we can have you back and talk about the shows that have come out this year. So,
talk about all the stuff you did over the summer. That would be awesome.
Hopefully, we'll have some good footage or something really, really interesting to talk about by then. I'm hoping we get something good.
Oh, you will.
You guys always have good stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say you will.
Let me know. I'd be happy to come back.
And if you need 3 people to go with you or 4 ladies to go with you to Alaska, I'm volunteering the blondes.
She wants to go hear the baby sounds.
I want to hear the baby sound.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Right. I don't fly, so I'll stay back.
Oh, come on now.
Well, we appreciate everybody.
At least there's 2 of us right here that'll go.
That's right.
There you go. We appreciate everybody tuning in. You guys come back here tomorrow night. You'll have some of the Blondes and the Booze and the Woo. We have Artie Hoffman coming on tomorrow night doing some live readings. I've never met him, and he was referred to us, and so he's a psychic medium that's out in Vegas, and he does live galleries and with a little bit of comedy twist, I was told. So anyway, tune back in here tomorrow night, and then next Thursday night we have Letitia. She'll be back along with the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and Nana Boss, Marty. We're going to just sit around and talk paranormal, ghosts, cryptids, whatever we feel like talking about. So join us back again next Thursday. So we appreciate everybody, and you guys have a good night. And until tomorrow night, we'll see you later.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.